Alright, so for today's video, I thought I would look at some of the things that I think makes life in Lithuania better than life in Canada. I emphasize I because I can guarantee you that personal experiences will differ, and these kinds of comparisons are really hard to make in any sort of general sense. Still, I hope my own personal list is relevant and relatable to most people watching. Most of my experiences compare where I grew up, Vancouver, to where I live now, Vilnius. And I know a lot of this is due to Canada's large scale and population, but I think there's more to the story as well. So let's get started. Okay, number 1, transportation. Transportation across Lithuania and neighboring countries is more affordable and has more options when compared to Canada. When it comes to urban transportation, I think fares are more affordable in terms of what you pay per kilometer traveled. Yep, paying less than €1 in Vilnius or Kaunas for a short trip is pretty fantastic. Traveling longer distances within Lithuania is easy and relatively affordable as well. I guess the thing about bus service between Canadian cities and communities is that sometimes it just doesn't exist. Greyhound Canada was one bus service that connected a lot of the country. Unfortunately, it ended its Canadian operations after the pandemic, and this made intercity travel across Canada much more difficult. And then in most cases, the train in Canada is more of a luxury experience rather than something that is used on a regular basis to get around, except for a few parts of Canada. Transportation is a tough one to compare when the scale between Lithuania and Canada is so different, but I'm convinced that in most cases, traveling comparable distances is cheaper in Lithuania than in Canada. It's probably more the case when you look at prices for bus travel between cities in neighboring countries, like to Warsaw or to Riga or Tallinn. Spending 8 to 9 hours on a bus between Vilnius and Tallinn, that can be less than €20. I'm sure with Flixbus and Ecolines, you can get pretty far for not more than €30 or €40. On that note, the cost of living is actually still somewhat bearable in Lithuania. Yes, a lot of prices have shot up since the pandemic, but it's the same in Canada. However, I find that the cheapest groceries are still quite affordable compared to their Canadian equivalents. In doing research for this video, I looked at basics like cabbage, apples, and potatoes, and these seem to be much cheaper in Lithuania. It's obviously impossible to compare every product, and there are so many variables such as the specific city and chain of stores and seasons, but I do get the strong sense that basic grocery costs can be lower in Lithuania. Housing in Canada's largest cities seems to have spun out of control.
Vancouver is seeing full-blown crisis levels. It's never been as expensive to own a home anytime, anywhere in Canada as it was in Vancouver in the fourth quarter. In Canada, the share of income needed to have home ownership is just over 63%. In Vancouver, it is more than 106%, significantly higher than other major cities.
I believe this is partially due to foreign investors buying up property as investments. It's a bit different over here. In Lithuania's largest cities, housing prices have gone up, but at the same time, finding small affordable apartments outside the city center is still possible as far as I know. I don't think the scarcity problem is as bad as it is in Canada. And sure, you can counter a lot of this by saying that Canadians generally make more money. Well, yeah, this is true. However, I feel that someone who is considered low income in Lithuania will have an easier time finding affordable housing and paying for basic groceries. And if they have to live further away from the city, well, at least public transportation costs are lower while still offering decent service. Mobile phone rates are crazy in Canada too. Some of the highest in the world actually. While in Lithuania one can get 20 gigs of mobile internet for about €14 per month, that's about double for something similar in Canada. And I think that price might even be before sales taxes.
Breaks down the average cost of mobile data around the world. For Instagram, that 5 minutes scrolling through stories, the average cell phone user in France would pay half a cent for that.
Wow.
In Canada, 20 cents. That download on YouTube, for the average Canadian, $2.36. For the average Irish user, 5 cents.
Are you serious? That big of a difference?
The download of Wednesday on Netflix?
The average user in Australia would pay
$1.63 for that?
By comparison, the average user in Canada,
$10.22.
Oh my God.
Oh, and that reminds me of my 2 last notes about costs. In Canada, taxes are always on top of most prices that are listed. So if you're buying clothing or electronics, well, be sure to add the extra 5 to 13% of taxes on top of that, depending on the province you're shopping in.
This is most peculiar because the sign clearly says $5.
Oh yeah, sorry, it's with tax.
Ah, but the sign says 5.
This is with tax.
But why would you not include this in the original price?
Oh, it says it right here.
So why is it not $6.18 on the poster?
Well, that's just...
Why must I be presented with this mathematical problem?
That's just how...
Why do you...
Tipping culture feels way more out of control in Canada as well. It seems like the tipping function appears on card machines in so many more areas of life in Canada than it does in Lithuania. I don't know, maybe the technology just hasn't caught up, but I do feel like the expectation and need to tip in Lithuania is lower than in Canada.
And when 18, 20, 25% extra has become the norm, where do you draw the line? What's tip culture in Brazil?
It's only 10% usually, and it's only in restaurants, so I think it's very different from here.
What was your reaction to seeing our tip?
I was a little bit shocked because it's very expensive to go out here.
I should say this is great for customers in Lithuania, but I just hope that workers are still paid fairly in Lithuania than compared to Canada. But I don't know. And then I feel like when it comes to crime and the perception of safety, I would feel more safe passing through the city center of Vilnius in the middle of the night than I would around the city center of Vancouver. Some of Vancouver's suburbs have also fallen victim to gang violence. I think the news reports coming from major Canadian cities do paint a picture of more crime and more heinous crimes than compared to anything you would find in Lithuania, in most cases.
Handguns, knives, body armor, and other weapons seized from a rooming house on the downtown east side. The teenage suspect had a gun and is very lucky he wasn't shot by police.
I don't think Lithuanian cities have had to deal with the same levels of drug use and mental health issues as some of Canada's largest cities. And then continuing on the topic of cities, I personally feel like Lithuania's cities are just so much more beautiful, at least their city centers. They're more walkable, they have more public spaces, and, for obvious reasons, more history. I just think the cities are nicer places to spend time in, but that's highly subjective. At the same time, I think Canada's biggest strength is its nature and landscape, and while that is a thing in Lithuania, there aren't as many mountains. But then finally, healthcare is an apparent one for me. I feel like after the pandemic, stories of insane wait times at Canadian hospitals was all I was hearing about. The health authorities in my home province even set up a website to show the wait times at the emergency departments of hospitals across the region. I'm checking this website at about 11 a.m. in Vilnius, so like 1 a.m. Vancouver time, and the shortest emergency department wait time is 4 hours, while it's up to 9 and 10 hours at other hospitals in the region. I don't think it's as bad in Lithuania. So I would say that most of my friends back in Canada know exactly what I'm talking about with all of this stuff. But at the same time, I don't think this video and the comparisons I've made are completely fair. Like I said before, there are a lot of factors to take into consideration. It does feel like big cities and big countries have their big city and big country problems. If I were to try and criticize my own points, then maybe the crime rate is higher in some areas of Lithuania when you control for population size. Maybe. And when it comes to public transportation, it's going to cost a lot to build these elevated and underground metro lines and all of the systems that support it. Mobile phone service costs can also be justified by the amount of infrastructure needed for this vast territory. One thing I know for sure is that I would probably be struggling financially if I had this same job and rate of pay and wanted to live close to Vancouver city centre with the same standard of living. Much more of my income would go towards housing, and I would be paying more for transportation and food. And then if I tried to live somewhere affordable, it would be in a far, far outlying suburb where I might spend 90 minutes to 2 hours getting to work each day. If I had the same job but working for a Lithuanian company, I know the pay will be a little lower, but I think after factoring in taxes and benefits, it's not hugely different. Of course, it will depend on the specific job and industry. Yeah, I think maybe the poorest of Lithuanian society might have the same struggles, but when it comes to basic needs, I think middle and upper classes of Lithuania will be spending less of their income in this category. And so to wrap it all up, I think a lot of people who haven't been to Canada might just see this idealized version in their minds. A land of opportunity, a place to have it all, but I think reality in many cases is not so nice. Sure, there is a lot about Lithuanian life that can be improved, but I do think it's underrated. There is a lot to be grateful for in this country. But with so many disclaimers and warnings about my opinions in this video, I do want to open it up to you. If you've experienced both life in Canada and life in Lithuania in recent times, I would love to know how you think these two countries compare. or maybe specific cities in each country. That's probably what I'm most interested to hear about with this video, so do leave a comment down below to let me know. That's it for me, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.